Should we just slide closer?
Which you
Yeah.
owl. If you get too close to the owl's gonna get it back to your head.
I'll put it get in the back.
Well, owl will be looking at the back of your head.
What?
How close? I mean, what do you mean get closer?
Let's just bring it back.
Oh.
I need to be able to see it though for.
Oh, good point.
Unless you want to see the slides.
How many members of the public here? They're probably connected. Hi, everyone. Sorry.
How you doing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You on yours okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Yep.
Right, we're just gonna be all lined up staring at the computer, but it's all good. I don't think we don't have a quorum issue, do we? If the majority of people, or if nobody's here in person? I hope not. Forget that. Just pretend I didn't say that. All right, welcome everybody. So let's do, since I can't quite see everyone who's on the screen, would you mind putting it as gallery view for a minute while we do introductions? Janine, can you do that? Does that not work in this format?
I think it's a different.
Oh, because it's
yeah,
webinar.
It's not a webinar, it's a meeting.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, why don't we just go into a quick roll call so that we know who's here? Starting with, oh, all right, there we go. I'm just gonna take it in the order I can see you from starting in the order that I see you. So let's start with City Davis.
Oh, City Davis is here.
Right. And then is that, it looks like that's Yolo County?
All right, Todd Ridio, Yolo County.
Right, Unitrans.
Hi, Jeff Flynn with Unitrans.
West Sacramento next? Who do we have from West Sacramento?
Stephanie.
Kevin Chan, Jason McCoy.
Okay, sorry, was that Stephanie and Jason?
Yes.
All right, great. City of Winters?
Eric Lucero.
And Mike Dewar from SOMAS helping Winters out on some YTD items.
Okay, great, welcome. City of Woodland.
Hey, everybody, Ken Hyatt, representing Woodland today.
Hey, Ken, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, who do we have left? Who's off camera?
Hi, this is Ian Justison. I'm from Caltrans covering for Manny.
Oh, great, welcome, Ian. Oh, is that Lucas? Yeah, I can't read.
Outside in a windy location. Lucas Griffith, please get in here.
All right, welcome, Lucas. Thanks for being here. Okay, I believe we have quorum. So great. Are we expecting, is anyone expecting anyone else? Should we wait for anyone or can we go ahead and jump in? All right, hearing none. Let's go ahead and jump in. Our first agenda item after determining quorum is public comment. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make comment?
No public comment.
Okay, great. Next is approving March 17th meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve.
I can make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do we have a second?
Second, Todd.
Thanks, Todd. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. All right. Our next agenda item is to receive and provide feedback on the preliminary budget and work plan for fiscal year 25-26. And Chaz and I are going to tag team this one. We sent you the budget last Wednesday, that the same budget went to the jurisdictions on Wednesday that then went to the TAC on Friday as part of your packet. And then we sent you an updated version this afternoon about an hour ago that just includes the 5-year update. There's no other changes to it. So everything else is identical, just included the 5-year update there. So apologies that you haven't had as much time to review it, but we'll definitely be going through that in detail. I'm happy to answer any questions. And as just a reminder, the budget will be going to the board next Monday, May 12th, for their first reading. Comments are due to YoloTD staff by May 30th, and then all of the comments that were received will be provided to the board prior when they take action on the budget in June. And of course, we'll also be providing a summary of any of the comments that we received during the call today for the board's consideration at their meeting next Monday. So with that, just by way of process, just wanted to share that. Let's go ahead and go to the first slide, Janine. All right, if you can go to make it full screen and go to the next slide. All right, great.
Last year's.
Oh, that is last year's. Do we not have this year's? Okay.
Send it to you, Julian.
So while you're doing that, I'll just start talking it through, or
Are you gonna send it in on Teams?
Yeah, you want me to send it directly to?
Sure.
Okay.
sorry about that, folks. Let's see, I'm trying to think what we can talk about. Any questions maybe while we're pulling that up? Any questions, anything that's on top of people's minds before we jump into the presentation?
Autumn, you said that you sent out the 5-year outlook this afternoon. I don't think or like an hour ago. I don't think I got it. So,
Okay, yeah, it was an updated PDF of the entire budget, but it includes the 5-year outlook. I may not have included you on that email, Stephanie. I think it went to Aaron. I think I CC'd Jason and Aaron and Andrea.
okay,
You right now, Stephanie.
thank you.
Sorry about that, Stephanie. Any other questions or anyone else not get the email?
This is Eric with City Winners. I didn't get it either.
Okay, do we have Eric's email?
I'll send it to Eric.
Okay, Jenny,
I didn't get it either, but I assume you sent it to Ryan.
I did, yep, okay, so we'll, once we get the slides, I'll go ahead and, let's see, if you've got that, do you have those email addresses? Let's see. So with Eric.
I can go back to my office.
Let me see if I can send it to you, Jennifer.
Oh, thanks,
I think I have your email.
Stacy.
That's not Eric's.
Oh, okay, Janine just sent it to you, Eric, so you look for an email from Janine. Thanks, everyone, thanks for your patience.
Is this the right slide?
Let's see, go to the. Looks like the right date. Can you go to the
Yeah.
next? Yay! All
Okay.
right, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide and make it full screen, that'd be great. Okay, great. And if you can you close that little box? The bottom corner, are you seeing that? All right, perfect. Okay, jumping right in. I'll talk fast. All right, so this is kind of highlights of this year's budget, or the proposed budget. Maintains current transit service levels, including the expansions that were recently implemented in Davis and West Sacramento. It was primarily the biggest one was Davis, where we restored a bunch of express routes, but also some smaller. We added a few trips back in West Sacramento. That took place in January, and then we expanded our beeline service hours and vehicles in winters and nights landing. That took place just last month in April. So the budget maintains those expansions and does not add any new service. We completed a comprehensive update of the hours and miles for our routes. We had been sort of, I would say, trying to amend an old spreadsheet that we were using as the basis for hours and miles in the past. We decided to take a clean look and make sure everything was, to basically essentially rebuild that. So it was a huge effort that staff undertook. And so you'll see a few tweaks in hours and miles for individual routes. But the upshot is it's largely the same. We do see a slight decrease in overall service hours and service miles based on, again, going through and doing a comprehensive update. No changes to current staffing levels. We do have a COLA built in there. Of course, that is at the board's discretion, but that's what you see assumed in the budget. And then for capital projects, some pretty significant new allocations of $7.2 million, and that's largely based on competitive discretionary grant funds from SB 125, as well as some federal funds that were also allocated for capital. Next slide. And with that, oh yes, also just to reiterate, the fixed route service levels, that just is a reiteration of the services that we implemented, the restorations we implemented in this current fiscal year. And just to remind, there is a service expansion plan that way out in 28-29, when the I-80 managed lanes project opens, there'll be 16 additional trips on the Route 42 AB that are funded with mitigation dollars for the YoloTD project. Next slide. And this just shows you the fixed route service hours and miles. Again, very little change from last year, except for to account for our redoing the numbers to make sure we had accurate allocation. So you'll see a few increases and decreases overall, but pretty close to not a significant change in terms of actual dollars. Next slide. For microtransit, this is a reminder of the service expansion that was implemented back in April. So we've expanded the hours of operation in winters and nights landing to match those that we have in Woodland, which is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the days that it operates. And then in winters, we are also adding a second vehicle during peak hours. So peak hours in the morning and peak hours in the afternoon to address the unmet demand that we have out there. What we were having is a lot of rides that people were booking rides and unable to get trips during those peak periods because of the limitations of having just one vehicle. So again, that service change was approved by the board in March and took effect just a few weeks ago in mid-April. Next slide. We do not have a proposed for our paratransit service. We anticipate actually a 1% decrease compared to last year's budget. That's because last year's budget assumed that paratransit use was going to continue to grow. We saw year over year very significant increases in paratransit service, both during and coming out of the pandemic. And as you can see in the table right on this slide. So our 24-25 budget assumed that growth was going to continue. What we have seen is the growth has leveled off. And so we're now projecting, we removed the cost escalator or the growth factor that was included as we're seeing that demand is continuing to grow, but much more slowly than it was before. And so that 1% decrease is compared to budget, not compared to actual. Next slide. And just a reminder, and for those who are new to this TAC, one of our primary sources of funding is the Transportation Development Act, or TDA, which is state funding for transit. That is flexible funding. It's broken into two pots. One is STA, State Transit Assistance. Those are funds that are generated by a sales tax on fuels and diesel fuels. 100% of those revenues flow to transit operations. The second category of TDA is our local transportation funds, or LTF, which are derived from a 1/4% sales tax. And those are flexible. Those are prioritized for transit service, but any unused transit LTF funds can be retained by the jurisdictions for other uses. And we use those as matching funds for our FTA federal funds, which are 5307 is the formula funds for the three urbanized areas, which are Woodland, Davis, and the Sacramento region, which includes West Sacramento. And then 5311, which is rural area formula funds. And those are what we use for service in winters, as well as other rural parts of Yolo County. And federal transit funds require a 50% match for when we use those funds for transit operations, and the TDA, those state funds, provide that local match. And if you want to know more about TDA, we do have, of course, a workshop coming up on May 27th, where we're going to be hearing a lot more about these sources of funding, both state and federal, at a special transit funding workshop here at our boardroom. Next slide. This shows the change in STA and LTF compared to last year. So what we've seen is overall STA and LTF. STA has gone down this year compared to last year, while LTF has gone up in terms of the amount of money that we collectively, Yolo County, are getting from the state. And this just shows you what that allocation looks like broken down by jurisdiction. Anything else you want to say on this, Chaz?
No, actually, the next few slides also talk about the STA and LTF allocations, which is kind of where we're picking up from last year, when we had a lot of conversation around this at the TAC and the CAC and board meetings. So the next couple of slides, and I can take over
Sure.
if you want.
Sounds good.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chas Federico, Director of Finance and Administration. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I know some of you were not with us at this meeting last year. So as I mentioned earlier, we spent quite a bit of time covering the TDA funds, STA and LTF. So the next couple of slides are just kind of presenting the information in a few different ways to add some, a little more clarification on how these funds are used by YoloTD. So this one that you're seeing is the one that Autumn just covered. And that's just really comparing the allocations, the annual allocations, to what was allocated last year. And then next slide, Janine. I'm clicking on my side. So this slide here is a summary of our overall 25-26 proposed budget, but it also focuses on how much of this budget is being funded with STA and LTF funds. So as you can see, I'll just talk a little bit about this first colorful section, but we can go into more detail once we go over the budget book. So you're seeing, as Autumn mentioned, and kind of gave you a run through of admin, fixed route, microtransit, and paratransit. We're really not seeing a whole lot of change there. As you can see, the bottom line change is about 325,000 in this year. And then what you're seeing is that the STA and LTF funding pretty much covers that bottom number right there in the 9.6 million of that operating budget. Next slide, please.
After this.
Yeah. So this one is just, again, another, one more back. There you go. So this one is just another presentation and just showing how much of the LTF and STA funds fund each, I guess you could say, program: administration, fixed route, paratransit, and microtransit. So as you can see here, and we can get into this a little bit more once we jump into the budget book, the administration is actually utilizing more of the STA and LTF funds just because of the way that the COVID funds, the one-time COVID funds, are being fully utilized in this current 24-25 fiscal year, so that we were actually having to shuffle some of the cash creep mitigation funds to fund more of the administration budget. So if you were with us last year and saw this, the ST and LTF portion of the admin budget represented a smaller amount because we had other funding sources to use at that time. So these tables are just showing you how much of the ST and LTF funds are going to each program. Next slide, please. And then this is another presentation, just kind of breaking it down and showing you, you know, the fares and the other types of revenues, which we also give a little bit more about in the 5-year outlook, what those other revenue sources are. So this is just giving you another presentation dollar wise and showing, you know, all the other types of funds that help us for this budget year. And as you can see in here, there are no one-time COVID relief funds to use in 25-26, and then you're seeing much of that offset by the SB 125 cycle 1 allocations. And so this is another topic that we went over a lot last year about the allocations. We were always around a 50-50 allocation where the jurisdictions were retaining approximately 50% of the total STA and LTF allocation. This year you see a slight change as compared to last year where YoloTD is retaining 46.2 or sorry, 53.8 versus the prior year's 50.7. Slide. And so this is our 5-year outlook. This is the email that you got just not too long ago. And we now have it updated. There's a few changes on here where I actually added the final budget and year-end projections to this 5-year outlook. This is something that we didn't have in the previous one. I just wanted to add a little more transparency so that you can compare to how we are pretty much building out the 25-26 budget and the 4 out years. For this specific year, and we can talk a little bit more about this when we get into the budget book, we are projecting a budget savings. This is due mostly because of the delay in the Davis Express routes where we did not implement that until mid-January. And then we also had in the administration, we had about $671,000 in budget savings, mostly due to salaries and other operating expenses. We carried pretty much 3 vacancies for almost the whole 24-25. And then in fixed route, we have some savings there as well due to the delay of the Davis expansion. And then microtransit as well. We didn't implement the expansion until late March or early April, I believe it is. And then of course, paratransit, that was just a result, the projection savings is a result of some of the right sizing that we're seeing with the inflators that we were using in the past couple of years. So that's what you're seeing that is new on this 5-year outlook, but more importantly, we're not seeing that there is a deficit in 25-26, nor are we seeing it in 26-27 and the out years. And that's mostly due to some relief from the SB 125 cycle 1 and 2 allocations, as well as the formula funds, the UZA funds that we were not utilizing during the time we were using COVID one-time relief funds. So now that we've had an accumulation of a couple of years of the FTA 5307 UZA funds, that's where you're seeing some increases in the out years of spending some of those funds down. There's also a little more detail in the budget book itself, but this is the overall picture of the 5-year outlook. And I don't know if we want to break for questions here.
Yeah, let's break for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and break for questions at this time. So, yeah, who's got questions?
I have a question, Mike Dewar. So I noticed that the STA and LTF fund allocation per agency is up, and for winners, I think it was 9%, but the actual LTF to the agencies is not up. So is that because of the CARES Act and using up the COVID funds and where LTF needs to cover that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so just to expand on that a bit, Chaz mentioned that the SB 125 funds are offsetting a lot of the one-time code recovery funds, but not everything. And so that's where we are seeing the increased, well, I shouldn't say increased utilization because it's kind of caught, because we're able to use that increment of additional LTF that's coming in. So we're not actually taking more than we took last year in terms of LTF, but we're not able to share any of that additional increase that's coming this year from the allocation.
Right, and also, as I was mentioning, with the FTA funds that are normally allocated each year, Autumn mentioned earlier, we only receive those for Davis, Woodland, and West Sacramento. So in the winters, as far as winter's funding, we're not able to apply any of those UZA funds to offset any of the one-time COVID relief funds.
Got it. That's because Winters gets part of the rural program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other questions on the budget?
Autumn, this is Ken with Woodland. The STA funds, I think you indicated, right, are lower than they were in prior years, trending down. Is that if that's accurate, is that a one-time or is that going to be a trend going forward?
It's a great question. I wish I had a good answer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Well, I was looking at this also, and we did a little bit of analysis on our side, and that really is just driven from the diesel fuel cells. And so what we were seeing on our side was that diesel fuel in the previous year was pretty high, and it was kind of tracking that way for a good 2 years. And then what we recently saw was it hit a decline. And so that's, basically saying it's cheaper. So being that the STA funds are driven from those sales, that was kind of my immediate correlation was that, it's costing less. And so we're seeing less, come in.
So STA funds are primarily derived from diesel gas tax. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
And as the price of diesel goes down, so does the STA revenue. Okay.
Correct. That's at least what I can see on my side. I'm sure there are other factors, but I think that's probably the most salient one.
Right.
And I don't know what drives the price of diesel. I don't know if that's an indicator of the economy or, if there's other factors there.
Right. But for the forecast, then we assume flat STA funding. Is that accurate?
Yes.
As we
Yeah,
get
we
better
hold
data.
constant,
Okay.
yeah, we hold constant costs as well as revenues, just to keep it simple.
Right.
Hmm.
And then if costs are going up, then hopefully revenues are going up too. Because we just don't want to put too many assumptions in here that may or may not be accurate.
Well, there's got to be costs, personnel, administration, right, being one of them that is not going to stay flat, right?
Right.
So it seems a little short-sighted in a forecast to, anticipate, costs to stay constant. It's not how we do our forecasting, right?
I understand, and that's a great point, Ken. I've only been here for 1.5 years. Last year was my first budget. The year before that was the first time that YoloTD did a 5-year outlook. And so I kind of inherited this constant dollar model. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I would love to redo it and right size it with kind of really how it probably should be or how most people will do it, but just to kind of keep things consistent, especially because we're going into the budget workshops. We wanted to at least try to be able to crosswalk from what was done before and what is being done now, to kind of help us identify any areas that we can either improve how we do things or improve the transparency of what we're sharing. So.
Well, I guess if not this year, when do we start building in, known, to our best knowledge, costs into the forecast model?
It's a great question. I think once we, we have these budget workshops coming up. I think once we're able to at least get past the second one, our big priority right now is to be able to include all of you and anyone else that's wanting to know, about our funding and how we arrive to our operating and capital budgets. So I think that, on my side, I think that would be the best time after we do the workshops, because at least we're all understanding, we've all shared our opinions and some of the things that we're concerned about, and we can incorporate that not in just into the 5-year outlook, but just in the, into everything.
Right.
I would just add for the transit funding workshop that's coming up on the 27th, we have, speakers from both FTA and the State Transportation Agency. And one of the things we've asked them to talk about is help us understand what's coming.
Right.
In terms of, because we see that, as costs go up, we've historically seen that revenues also increase. Now, the rate of increase of cost relative to revenue varies. Of course, we've seen a lot of inflation in recent years. We saw a huge surge in funding during COVID. That's now gone away. With the current administration in DC, who knows what's going to happen with transit funding? We are in a period where we need a transportation bill to be reauthorized. And there's a lot of uncertainty about when that's going to happen and what's going to be included in that reauthorization. And as well, so anyway, I hope that our speakers from both the Fed and the state will be able to give us some helpful answers in terms of what we may reasonably be able to anticipate going forward. Other questions or comments on the budget? To this point?
I'll throw one more out. The TransDev contract, is that, I think I recall that's coming due fairly soon.
Yeah, so this is the last base year of that contract. We have been in conversation with TransDev. I think we're gonna go ahead and do one additional year. We have the ability to do unilateral option years for 2 more years, essentially, on that contract.
Okay.
So we're looking at doing one additional year, which TransDev doesn't love, but they've accepted it. And then we're gonna be going out to bid. Our goal is to have a new RFP for a new transit operations contract by the end of this year on the street. So those, then that would then take effect, essentially August 1 is our contract, is the annual date of that contract. So that would take effect August 1 of 2026. So we'd be looking at the financial impact of that would be in the next fiscal year.
Okay, and for the current contract, what's the adjustment that TransDev is expecting?
That's factored into this budget. I don't know off the top of my head.
It's 5%.
Okay, so that's, as a forecast input, that is not reflected as flat. That's built into the.
It's
cost.
built in.
Okay.
Ken, you're on a roll. You got anything else?
No, I'm taking up too much airtime.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments.
Nope, they're good. And I appreciate your questions that you fielded last week and throw answers back. So very helpful.
Thanks. And just, the response I provided today, I didn't run it by Chaz first. So if I got anything wrong, I'm assuming that she's going to correct it.
No, it's good.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to put that caveat out there. In the interest of time, I was trying to get back to you, but she was working on the 5-year outlook and I wanted to let her focus on that. So yeah, keep those questions coming. If anything comes to mind for anyone after this meeting, we wanna hear it. All right, but if not anything else right now, let's keep moving. So the annual work plan, Janine, don't bother putting that slide deck back up because I think we were all working in different slide decks and I realized that that version does not have the update. So why don't we go ahead and go to the budget document? And if we can go to the last page of the budget document, which is also in the packet, that's got the highlights of the annual work plan. I will say the The presentation of the annual work plan is a little behind this year. I will say it's all of the thinking is in the budget. So there shouldn't be any surprises here. There shouldn't be anything in the work plan that's not already in the budget, but we just haven't gotten it all written up. But there is a summary on the last page. So page 23 of the document, or page 33 of the packet.
No, 23 of them, 23.
Yeah, 23 of 23. Yep. All right. Can you all see that? So I can't see if that's what it is. It looks right. All right. So some highlights. There's a lot of things that are actually kind of multi-year efforts that are reflected here. Not a ton of new stuff, but we want to complete, of course, our short-range transit plan and COA, which really says what's the future of our service for the next 5 to 7 years. The goal is to have that completed and approved by the end of the calendar year and then any service changes or other changes would take effect probably the beginning of the next fiscal year, so July of 2026. We're continuing, of course, to work on the YoloTD managed lanes project, a lot of work there that we won't go for you with all the details. We do want to complete planning for a new transit center in Woodland to replace the County Fair Mall. We're hoping to have that new location baked into our short-range transit plan, so we're working hard with Ken and his team to try to find alignment on a location by the end of this calendar year. We'll be finalizing the Yahtzee plan, which I know a number of people on this call have been involved in, and hopefully completing design work for 1 to 3 priority segments. We've got a capital improvement plan and zero emission fleet transition plan, which are somewhat baked into the SRTP, but we're going to bringing those items, pulling those out and bringing them to the board. We do have some pretty significant long range capital needs, particularly as it's related to our mandate to transition to zero emission buses. And so Brian has been leading a bunch of work to really get our arms around exactly what that's going to cost and how we achieve those state targets. And so, what we have as far as capital projects in the current budget just really reflects the next couple of years, but this capital improvement plan is really looking out over the next 10 years to try to understand what the total universe of need is. So we hope to be bringing that forward later this calendar year to you all and to our board. The Connect card is going away. We've been working, SACRT leads a regional consortium of the transit agencies that use the Connect card. It's going to be going away next spring. And we are in the midst of transitioning to new payment methods. We're going to be using a tap to pay system, so you can use your debit card or credit card. We still don't know exactly what the implications are for monthly passes, because the way that system works, it's a bit different. But we're working through that with our regional transit agency partners. And so expect a lot of communication from us. That's going to be a big change for a lot of our riders. So expect a lot of communication on kind of what that looks like over the next year, not to mention getting all the technology installed and up and running. And then lastly, we've alluded a couple times to these transit funding workshops. We're going to be working with you all and our board to try to address potential future transit funding shortfalls and identify solutions. I think the message of our 5-year outlook is because of the influx of funding around with COVID recovery dollars and SB 125, we're good for the time being, but it's going to run out. That funding is going to run out. And if the state doesn't come up with some solutions, and that's part of we know that there's efforts around that, but if the state doesn't come up with solutions, then we're going to be on our own for either cutting service or figuring out other funding options. And so these funding workshops now are really educational, but we're going to be kind of over the course of next year pivoting to what are some of our options, additional options for additional funding if the state and federal government don't continue to increase transit funding to address the funding shortfalls that transit agencies are replacing. So big priority for us this year. We do have a number of procurements that are listed in other sections of the work plan, but that are not noted here, so I won't repeat them for the sake of brevity, but happy to answer any questions on any of those procurements as well. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
I had one question about why the efforts with YOLO commute were not included in the work plan.
That's a very good question. Probably because I left it out.
Okay.
Brian's going
Yes.
this way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Autumn needs to, condense this to the sort of most high profile things that are occurring, and it's sort of embedded in there with the YoloTD work plan item.
Yeah, so this is not comprehensive. There's a lot of other stuff. This is kind of highlights. And that's not to say it's not Yolo commute isn't super important, which it is.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'll jump in. Thanks for the information, Autumn and team. On the Connect card thing, I did ask the staff, your staff, Autumn, to keep me in the loop too. We were left out of all those conversations, and now that Zip Pass is going away, we're the largest user of Zip Pass. We're kind of like now playing catch up mode, but we're still not in all the conversations. So I just would appreciate if YTD staff could keep me at Unitrans apprised of any of those discussions around Connect Card and Zip Pass going away and all that stuff with Masabi. And then I'm looking forward to those budget workshops because the funding pie is not getting any larger. Maybe the pie is shrinking, and all of us are just as hungry as ever. So these difficult conversations, having these connections, making these presentations, I think is very important as we all look towards our uncertain futures.
Thanks, Steph. I appreciate that. And why isn't Unitrans part of those regional conversations that are led by SACRT? Why is that?
They weren't aware that we were using Zip Pass at all.
Huh.
And they're the lead contract holder for Zip Pass. It's very odd, but we are where we are right now. So we're kind of trying to play catch up with, are we going to join this now consortium with the region and SACRT? How we transition our customers once Zip Pass turns off. So we're just playing some catch up right now.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments or questions on the work plan? Okay. All right. Hearing none, then I think we're going to wrap up the budget conversation and we're going to talk about STIP. So I'll turn it over to Brian. Thank you all.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Brian Abinat, Planning Director for Yolo Transportation District. So as you all know, we've been working over the past almost year now on a coordinated sort of approach to the the changing 4-county STIP program the SACOG administers. And so we got into a place where we had an MOU that we felt like we had everyone's agreement on, and a funding split for the countywide allocation. All of this is not new information for most of you on the call. And so we were preparing to circulate the MOU for signatures once everybody was able to bring it to their decision makers, for approval, whether that was a board or a council or what have you. So things were moving fairly smoothly. It turns out that we got news, I want to say about a couple of weeks ago, that the city of West Sacramento was not going to be able to participate in the partnership, which I know is not a reflection on the staff. The staff has been working with us very closely and has been participating in good faith in this partnership. This was more of an executive level decision. And so understandably, the staff is in a sort of difficult situation, but hopefully they'll be able to answer some questions for us just to help set the landscape. I mean, that's the purpose of today's conversation, is to get a sense of where everybody is. You all received the announcement that I sent out. As soon as we learned that West Sacramento wouldn't be participating, and just trying to get a sense of what all of you are, whether or not that changes your approach to this STIP cycle, and if so, in what ways? And then also in, to what extent you're, if we're planning to partner with anybody, if you still are partnering with other local agencies, for this cycle. So really kind of an open forum to get a sense of sort of how the recent developments in our MOU partnership is affecting your approach to this STIP program. So I'll open the floor there for any comments or questions.
Hey, Jason McCoy, City of West Sacramento. Again, here with Stephanie Chan. This was a little bit of a surprise for staff as well. We have been in conversations with SACOG and talked with them. I've talked with just had a meeting with the city manager last week. We are going to be submitting a STIP application. Our application is going to include, at the direction of our city council, that will be for more than our allocation. However, we are also asking for, as an alternative, this is based on discussions with SACOG and the understanding that we were very close to executing an MOU, and all of you partners were signed on to that. We're going to be asking for an amount that was within our allocation in the MOU, with the understanding that it is highly unlikely that SACOG would be awarding anything over that amount in the MOU. So I want to kind of ease the partners in the region's minds that I think SACOG has your back on this, and we are going to be asking for an amount within the allocation that would have been in the MOU had we adopted it. That's all I can tell you at this point. I can tell you that the concerns that our executive team and city council had that was not communicated to us until recently, that the feeling of the future growth projections in the blueprint were not adequately reflected in the MOU. So what I was told is that City of West Sacramento is taking a big brunt of a lot of the population growth in the region, and we're having to accommodate that population growth. And even though population is reflected in the MOU, the funding that's required to accommodate the future growth needs to be reflected now. So what has been told to me that we would like to do is to include those future growth projections in addition to population and road miles. How we do that, I don't know. If we can come to an agreement there, I don't know. But I have been told to definitely communicate. We would like to start now with trying to figure out a way to reach an agreement in an MOU that we could all sign on to. And then just showing some good faith. Again, we're asking for an amount in our grant application that is within our MOU amount. So that is more than likely. And I've talked to Christina Spanks over at SACOG to just let her know that, you know, we are going to be including that in our application, and the understanding that that's more than likely what we would be awarded, and it wouldn't be more than that. Happy to answer any questions, and my apologies.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that explanation. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts in response to Jason's remarks?
Get your tomatoes.
Well, I'm just curious, what year for your growth population are you thinking about?
I don't know. I just know that what I've been told is that we're having to absorb a large amount of growth in the region that's attributed to the regional blueprint. And as a party that would be in the MOU, we would want to see the future growth projections as a consideration in what the funding allocation would be.
I see.
I don't quite know how to get there. I'm trying to think about it, and I'm hoping all of you can help me figure out how that would be accurately reflected. So I don't know at this time. I think it would just have to be some discussion, and we may not get there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, Jason's right that this is going to require, more conversations through the TAC process like we did, leading up to this point. And so obviously that would need to be something that the rest of the partners would be, willing to agree to. And so, yeah, there's a lot more to bite off with that than we can chew on today, but, it still does leave us, technically without a signed MOU from the city of West Sacramento. We are still circulating the MOU amongst the other participants, just, more for formality's sake at this point, and just to really kind of, formalize the commitments that all of you have put into this process up to this point. And if anything is able to sort of materialize before the end of, this cycle where West Sacramento is able to participate, then we've got, the signatures already there. So my question is whether or not, the absence of a signature from West Sacramento on the MOU, whether or not that is fundamentally affecting how the remainder of the partnership agencies are approaching this cycle. I have heard from SACOG that there might be, there might be an agency that is also planning to submit for more than what their allocation would have been, but not knowing if that's, not understanding sort of where the city of West Sacramento and SACOG's position is on this today. So I'll leave it there. Any comments?
Well, I'll speak for Woodland. I think, once we heard the West Sac was having second thoughts about the MOU, given the short time frame, we pivoted and said, well, we're going to submit a full application that would likely exceed what our fair share allocation would have been. But I think what we should all do at this point is, approach those that are submitting applications, approach it similar to what West Sacramento just described, and caveat that, we're working towards an MOU. It hasn't been executed yet. There may be a formula that we can all agree on, or there may not be. But, hopefully that, we're all submitting kind of with a similar position relative to where we are or are not with an MOU.
The city of Davis is not going to submit. We're going to bank our money until 2027 until we have an MOU.
And I would say that City of Winters also is not going to submit. We were in discussions with Brent at Woodland about trying to do a transfer or swap of funds. I think the news from West Sac did kind of put those conversations on hold. So I'm not sure, Ken, how or if there's a way to approach that right now. Otherwise, we, City of Winters would want to bank funds as well for a future application.
But correct me if I'm wrong, if there is no MOU, there is no banking per se, unless, right? As otherwise it's competitive, right? Whatever funds are available this round are available. Unless we come to an agreement else.
Right, so your suggestion that we, that the participants proceed as if the MOU was in effect is probably the best course of action to take. The money is banked for recipients for Yolo County, not Yolo County as an agency, but within this county. So they shouldn't be they won't be programmed elsewhere in the region. It's just that if you have participants who are applying for more than their allocation, then that just does risk upsetting the sort of the fairness of the sub-allocation calculator that everybody agreed to. Now, SACOG is going to say, well, we don't intend on approving anybody's award for more than what their allocation would have been. Then we have a backstop there that sort of preserves the integrity of the partnership until we're able to sort of renegotiate that in the upcoming year. Does that all make sense?
I think so. Is UC Davis going to be applying this round?
And UC Davis is out of the partnership. They're not eligible for these funds, I don't believe. And they opted to sort of, try to withdraw from that. So the city of Davis and their local transit partner are sort of representing the city of Davis's allocation.
Their local transit partner being Unitrans,
Right.
and Unitrans is eligible for these funds?
No, they are. Unitrans is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Unitrans is the university, but these funds are only eligible to be used on transit, which is Unitrans.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, is Unitrans positioning for a application this round?
The university will coordinate with the city separately to have this. Our goal would be for the city to bank or get the funds for the city plus university, and the city and university will have a separate agreement to get our funding from the city.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yolo County just applied for the amount per the MOU.
Okay.
And does that, it sounds like most of us are either applying for that amount or for that amount as a backup or not applying. By my math, it seems like you still might be the only agency that is potentially applying for more than what the allocation would have been, or are you now saying you no longer intend to do that?
Well, I think with the information provided today, I'd be inclined to, take a similar approach to West Sacramento, right, in hopes that we are able to reach an agreement on an MOU. But in the event that we're not, I'll have to talk to, SACOG staff around, how they would, self-determine that they're only going to allocate, a formula based on an MOU that wasn't allocated or approved. But,
Right.
I think there's a way to, buy some time for us all to come back to the table and see if there's a formula that West Sac feels is fair and contemplates, future growth. But I'll talk to staff on our end anyways to see what we need to do to nuance our application to be consistent and fair with everybody else.
Yeah, I think the pre-application was due Friday for this. So, I think probably a lot of people already put something in. We're expecting that, it's going to take some time. So, to negotiate, it took forever for us to get to the point that we're at now. So again, that's why we put in an alternative. I can't just defy the city council and say, we're just going to put in for what our allocation is. So our best way to do this without defying our city council, doing what they're requesting, but at the same time doing what SACOG is recommending that we do, and definitely play nice with the partners. So that's why we have that secondary request. It's like, well, if we can't get full funding, then let's get within our allocation. So hopefully if you guys do put something in, you can put in something like that, and more than likely SACOG would be like, this is what you're going to get awarded.
Right.
Jennifer, you seem confused.
And I just wanted to clarify, when you say in the hopes that we can get an MOU negotiated, did you mean, is that hope time bound to this current cycle? In other words, before applications are due for this round, or are you talking about in advance of the next cycle, which is what I think Jason was saying, right? That the hope is to try to get an MOU for the next cycle.
Next cycle is what I was referring to. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be naive to think that, right, we can all come back to the table in a time frame of FACOG's decision-making process, which I wouldn't be surprised if that drags out longer than they expect or whatnot, but certainly before the next round. But I'd be concerned that if we, kick this down the road too far, right, we may never get to an MOU. So I would encourage us to, come back to the table quickly and try to address West Sacramento's, concern or request and see if we can find common ground on that or not.
Agreed.
So would we want to try to make some progress on that prior to the city Woodland making a final decision regarding their application for this round?
Yeah, but you tell me what the time frame looks like. I don't want to respond to that without knowing the commitment we're
So
We're gonna-
applications are due, final applications are due in early June. And then I think they've scheduled the board to make a decision in August. Whether or not we can all get to a place of agreement with respect to the West Sacramento concerns, I wouldn't say that, well, I don't know, because again, even if we were to come up with something at the staff level, we'll all need to bring it back to each other's boards and city councils. And that's probably not a predictable process. And, many boards and councils do take, a summer break for a month or so. So my guess is that we probably wouldn't be able to get that resolved by the time the SACOG board needs to make a decision. In that case, the safest path forward, I think, for everybody is to apply for within their amount. The money that you would have applied for beyond that in the absence of an MOU won't be going anywhere. You just need to, if we still don't have an MOU resolved by the next cycle, then we can go back to an open competition. But also remember that, some of our, sort of perceptions of the fairness of the calculator, is reflective of the amount of STIP funding that we have, right? So everything that we see on here is gonna change a little bit, and we won't know what the allocations will actually look like outside of a percentage. From a percentage standpoint, we won't know until, for another probably year and a half.
Right. But then say we don't reach agreement on the MOU and, an agency has a project ready to move forward, could use the funding. Is there anything to preclude us from entering into an agreement with, say, Winters for a swap of funds? Or do we lose that opportunity?
No, I wouldn't have any objection to that at all. It's just remember the whole premise of this, well, Ken, you weren't, really participating in the process because Brent was playing that role, but the idea was, to try to keep everybody whole this cycle. So if you wanted to apply for more, then yes, that would be the best case scenario where you would be, looking to swap funds with, another partner.
Right, but we couldn't do that unilaterally, right? We would need SACOG approval.
I think that as long as the documentation is there and there's, an understanding on their end that this is mutually agreeable between the two, then my guess is they would be okay with it.
And I would say that was the approach that I think we were trying to work out with Brent. And, we didn't have the details dialed in quite yet, but I think we're getting close.
Because otherwise the funds just sit in a bank account with SACOG, making a little bit of interest, losing money against inflation, waiting for the next round. Is that right? Which is 2 years out.
That's right. The other scenario, which we could be looking at, was if you do apply for and are awarded that more than this year's allocation, then we could subtract that amount from a future year allocation.
I'm wondering too, though, what if SACOG only gets, say, 3 applications? Would they try to just award all of that money to all those 3 applicants, regardless of the MOU, since it's not enforced? Just a question.
Given where we are and sort of their understanding of our process, I doubt they would do that. Keep in mind that this process that we all developed has now sort of spread to the rest of the region. So you have Yuba and Sutter County that are doing the same thing. You've got Sacramento County that's doing the same thing, being led by Sacramento Transportation Authority. So essentially, everybody in the region is doing what we were intending to do. We just got thrown a little curveball. And so we're trying to, trying to figure out how we can, sort of preserve the partnership as best we can until we can get an MOU signed between everybody.
Brian, do you know if the other counties are using a similar formula to what we had contemplated?
Yes, yes, I'm pretty certain that the Sacramento County is using essentially the same formula that we used because they asked us for it.
Okay.
When SACOG called me up and said, what the heck is happening? They let it be known to me that it is going to be highly unlikely that anybody that asks for more than the pot, their allocation in the pot of funds that was identified in the MOU, it would be highly unlikely that they would be awarding
anything more
than that. And I said, message received.
For the Sacramento County, I found the Sacramento Transportation Authority's agenda report regarding the MOU. And theirs is similar but more complicated than ours. They wanted to split like rail and transit from active transportation and streets. So they have like different categories. And then also the way they do their formula for like the with the population and streets is that they do a population 75% and the center line miles at 25 because I think that's the way they said that state California Street and Highways Code does it.
So they weight population a little bit greater than centerline miles.
Mm-hmm.
Which we could do as well. I did run the calculations on that, and at least for us, because the amount of funding for the county for our county is relatively small. It doesn't, move the needle a whole lot for us. It does a little bit, but, and we can certainly look at that. I don't have any objection to doing that.
Just so folks know too, after talking with our city managers, I'd be happy to speak with other folks, representatives if need be, to kind of get the conversation started.
Yeah, Jason, I was just going to offer to call Aaron. He and I spoke about a week ago on this.
Okay.
So maybe, yeah, I can touch base with him and Kelly and Davis, just kind of see where they're at.
That'd be great.
Yeah, see if he's got an idea how to approach the future population projection factors. But okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for being the messenger, Jason.
Doing my best.
Hey, Ken, if this is Mike Dewar again, if you're still interested in trying to work out a swap this go round, have Brent reach out to either Eric or myself.
Okay. Yep.
Okay,
Will do.
Thanks.
I mean, it makes sense to me not to just leave money on the table for a couple of years. So we'll certainly follow up.
Yes.
Cover as much ground on this as we can. Okay, all right. Autumn, over to you for the next item.
Yeah, so I think, the last item that we have is the long-range calendar. So that's on the very last page of the packet. You know, I know this committee's been meeting monthly, to work on this STIP, but, as of this point, we're back to quarterly meeting cycle. Based on the conversation today, I don't know if that's something that we're gonna wanna change, and maybe have more frequent meetings, or let me know, or let us know, I would say. Sounds like, Ken, you know, you're gonna talk with the other city managers, and then maybe you could, you know, circle back to us as far as whether there's a need to reconvene this group more quickly. But otherwise, our next meeting is scheduled for September, where we'll be talking about that long-term capital improvement plan that I mentioned earlier, and a discussion on a countywide travel survey, which is something that we've been wanting to do for a while, and we're hoping to make that happen this year. And ironically, we then have TBD debrief STIP funding program cycle. I think this was written before several weeks ago. And then of course, this also flags that Caltrans District 3, while they have agreed to sort of stand down for this cycle, that their participation in a future funding agreement is also undetermined, and it's something it's good to be reminded that we need to figure that out as well. Anything you want to add on the long range calendar, Brian?
No, I think that's it. Regarding the September 8th item, so we've been working on capital improvement plan and, you know, trying to get a sense of what those, you know, capital expenses and what the magnitude of those expenses are going to be, you know, in the upcoming year. So, hoping to share that with you folks at that meeting. And then the countywide travel survey, as Autumn mentioned, we have been wanting to do that. We do hope to, issue an RFP for that next fiscal year. And we'll want your input on the types of information that you would think would be valuable for you, because, you know, the purpose here is that, yes, we would like to have that type of data because we sort of need it as a congestion management agency, but really the intent is to get for all of you data that many of you aren't collecting, but you really need to for your own climate action adaptation plan. So we want to make sure that whatever we do collect, you'll be able to use and to track over time, sort of progress towards those transportation system goals that you all have at the local level. So that's just sort of the context behind that item.
Brian, do you have any date, like you said next fiscal year? Is it next fall, winter, spring? We're gonna start our general plan update, so this could be very valuable.
Yeah, I think the idea is first half of the fiscal year. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get this on the TAC calendar as soon as possible, to make sure that we get the input and we understand what data you need in order for that to be valuable for you, because we're just trying to do for the county what's really difficult for all of you to do by yourselves individually. It's hard to get money at the local level to do this type of work. And we want to be able to provide that value to all of you. And so we'll be interested in what ideas you have to bring for that project.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on the long range calendar? Okay, if not, so we may be scheduling another meeting sooner rather than later, potentially on the STIP. More to come on that. But otherwise, as of this moment, our next meeting is scheduled for September 8th, and let's all be in touch. Thanks, everyone. Bye.